Welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise, WTO, World Trade Organization. It's a topic, it's a theme that we've been talking about now, not just this year, but for many, many years. Very pleased to be joined again this morning by the Chief Negotiator for the Bahamas Working Party Committee, Zhivargo Laing. I almost went to say minister again, but of course you are still.
You'll be forgiven.
Always will remain a minister to me. Welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise.
Good to be here.
And listen, the question was asked during the mid-show, and you said, listen, man, bring Star on. Let her come and ask herself. So we've got Star as well joining us in this segment. Let's start off. Maybe there's an announcement. I don't know if there's an announcement.
No, you ask, you go.
Okay, well, let's talk. Let's start with Star's question. Star.
Yeah, so you love me saying minister. Mr. Laing, certainly these negotiations have been, we've heard this word so many times before, but now more than ever there's this sense that this thing is actually going to happen.
Right.
And people are concerned about that because they wonder if there's some social or international pressure forcing us into the WTO, and then why is it that it's necessary for us to, one, do it, and two, do it now?
Well, interestingly enough, I took that application form to Geneva in 2001.
Okay.
That's 18 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was somebody who was socially pressuring us, boy, they must be pretty weak. For 18 years, the best they could do is help us drag along. Now, there's no social pressure. In fact, what happened is the government, this new administration, and I think it's best to say, the Ingram administration took this up, the Christie administration continued it, the Ingram administration continued it, the Christie administration continued it, and so this new administration looked at the timetable for the ministers of trade. They're the ones who actually make the determination about your joining, and their next meeting was scheduled to be the end of this year.
Okay.
And so they said, well, let's see if we could get this done by the end of this year so that we could be a part of that meeting. Well, that meeting's been pushed off to next year. June sometime. And that was what created the sense that, oh, why are you doing it urgently? No, they were just trying to meet a ministers of trade meeting for the WTO. That's the highest decision-making body of the WTO. Why do it? You do it to get more of what has made you one of the third most prosperous countries in the Americas, having a trading environment that is internationally impactful. Tourism, financial services, even your wholesale and retail trade could not be what it is without the openness of your suppliers here to buy abroad. Okay. So you join the WTO, it gives many more investors the certainty of how you do things, that there's an openness about it, that there's a transparency about it, so you become more attractive for investors. So that's one thing, and that almost every acceding country has tended to see some level of growth, 2 percentage point growth on average, after acceding for about 5 years. And even if the growth stops, the economy never shrinks below that 20% increase that it gains over the period. And so you want the growth. We need the growth. The other thing that benefits is, in a WTO environment, the average rate of tariffs is reduced. Well, who's that going to benefit? That's going to benefit Bahamian businesses who now have to pay an average of 30% on everything they bring into the country before they sell a single unit. And so they're going to be able to take the savings from that capital that they expend up front and use it for other purposes. They may expand their businesses or whatever. They may employ new staff. Then Bahamian consumers can get the benefit of those savings if you have lower duties on average. Some people say, well, how are you going to ensure that? Well, I say this. If the government engages somebody to track the prices of the things on which the duties are reduced, then they are able to announce to people, I'm not getting the benefit of this duty, and therefore they may make other decisions about how to deal with that. You also get the benefit of a modernized set of legislative legislative tools to do business. For instance, intellectual property rights legislation strengthening is important for innovation. You get competition policy strengthening. That's important for consumers to get lower, better prices. And so you get a more modernized environment to do things. Additionally, and this is what Bahamians tend to miss, right now Bamboo Shack, Bahama Grill are Bahamian companies in the US. So is Golden Cross, a Jamaican company. Golden Cross, by obligation of the WTO, since Jamaica and the U.S. are in the WTO, can get the benefit of most favored nation status, national treatment, because they are both in the WTO. Bamboo Shack and Bahama Grill has no such obligation by America. It doesn't matter now. It may not matter now, but one day it may matter. And you know what they always say about unions? Better to have one and not need one than to need one and not have one.
Well, I'll tell you what. 18 years later, and there's still this sense of why, or this fear.
Anxiety, yeah.
What do you think is driving that?
It's a number of things. I mean, let's be clear. WTO, IMF, World Bank, United Nations, these global governance institutions have issues. I mean, and people have globally seen them with some suspicion, and so that's understandable. They are imperfect, but you know, a world absent them is not a world I can tell you I want to live in.
Okay.
Making them better is a world I would like to live in. And so I can understand people's anxieties about them. Also, there's lots of people who don't know. I mean, listen, I've been studying international trade and economics for years. There are many, many things about international trade and economics that I still have yet to learn. If you're an average citizen, you're not taking up with this, you're both doing your business, etc. You have issues because you don't necessarily know. I understand that. There are the agreements, there are about 60 agreements that govern the WTO. They have not 20,000 pages, as some people say, 500 pages. Not everybody's going to take time to read all of that, study that up, etc. So you have that. And then you have lots of misinformation out there. You have people telling people it's free movement of labor, that kind of stuff, which is untrue. And so people soak that up. And so you have fairs driving some of this.
One of the fears I do know that people have is that we've had protected industries for some time. We take a look at our legal services, very protected. I know engineers, for example, you have to have a local engineer. You know, and so there are certain industries that have benefited greatly from insulation. What are those protections going to look like post-negotiations?
Well, you see, this is the excellent question. This is the point of the negotiations. The negotiations say, you sit with counterparts and say, listen, I'm going to join this thing, but brethren, I'm not going to open this area up. And if I open it up, I open it up only to this extent. And you negotiate these things with the sectors themselves having led you to the points of negotiations. So we're sitting with the lawyers, and the lawyers will say to us, listen, we could take perhaps international companies setting up here to do international law, not to do Bahamian law, not to practice, to do the things we can do. And they might have an issue of, okay, well, how do we enforce that? Well, we have to work through that. But they're not saying, no, we're not going to do anything. They're saying, here's a way we can negotiate it. Similarly, with other industries, they can say to us, you know what, we can take this lowering of duties, but not any further. And now that becomes our negotiating point. And I think we have some leverage with the WTO now because I think, one, they want this to happen because they need the boost for their own reputations. And then secondly, the Bahamas has already been a fairly open economy. And so it's not as if we're coming in so close that we have huge concessions to make. And so I think that we can do minimal amounts of adjustment and still get the gains of being a WTO member. But that's the negotiations. We won't know until we're finished. And so once we're done, we can look at it and go, yes, we can live with that, or no, we can't live with that, and make up our minds what we're going to do.
Okay.
All right, well, excellent. So we are obviously committed to the process. I believe I would have read that the next working party meeting would now be towards the end
sometime in February.
Just explain to us, you know, what's the remainder of the process, where we are now, and what's the remainder of the process.
And I'm going to tell you, make an announcement to you today, because I think I made a commitment when I became chief negotiator that I wanted to, one, walk hand in hand with the sectors. They're the ones who trade in this process. And two, to be as transparent with the Bahamian public as possible. So the offer we have on the table today and the responses we got to those offers, in the next couple of days, we will be releasing to the public of the Bahamas. You get to see them yourself. You'll get to see every item of, every detail of every item that we have said to these people we're prepared to do, not to do. And they'll be able to see for themselves what's happening. But where we are now is we now have to respond to the request made to our initial offer.
Okay.
And so we're meeting with the sectors so that we can say to them, listen, this is what the U.S. has asked us to do in respect to your sector. What can we agree is doable? And then we will provide a new offer on the basis of our consultations with the industry. And I think people will, if you read the details carefully, people be surprised. They'll be like, this is what we're doing. This is what it's about. I think they'll be a little surprised.
Well, excellent. Zhivargo, thank you so much for joining us.
My
once again
pleasure.
On Bahamas at Sunrise.
My pleasure.
You'll be sure to give Star your cell number just in case there remains some.
She has to come on my show.
Very good, very good. You're watching Bahamas at Sunrise. We've been with the Chief Negotiator for the Bahamas, Zhivargo Laing, WTO Ascension Process. We'll be right back.